Okay, this is actually the perfect size for poetry reading and conversation. And I would say we just read the poem, see what happens. We can talk about it for the next hour, but it'd be really uninteresting. So I think what we'll do is I'll read the first sentence, pass it on to Terry, read a sentence or two, pass it to your right. We'll read the whole poem once, so we just have it present, and then we'll just work through it beginning to end. And my job is mainly just to make sure that we get through the poem in an hour. I mean, we could spend much more time on it, but Tennyson wrote in the 19th century. This poem is early 1830s, just so it doesn't really matter, but that's sort of where this poem fits in history. And it's called Ulysses. It little profits that an idle king by this still hearth among these barren crags, matched with an aged wife, I mete and dole unequal laws unto a savage race that hoard and sleep and feed and know not me.
I cannot rest from travel. I will drink life to the lees. All times I have enjoyed greatly, have suffered greatly, both with those that loved me and alone, on shore and when through scuddling drifts, the rainy Hyades, vexed the dim sea.
So we'll just ask you to read on.
I am become a name for always roaming with a hungry heart. Much have I seen and known, cities of men and manners, climates, councils, governments, myself not least, but honored of them all.
And drunk delight of battle with my peers, far on the ringing plains of windy Troy. I am a part of all that I have met, yet all experience is an arch, weather throw, readings that untraveled world whose margin fades forever and forever when I move.
How dull it is to pause, to make an end, to rest unburnished, not to shine in use.
As though to breathe were life, life piled on life. We're all too little, and life piled on life, we're all too little. And of one to me, little remains. But every hour is saved from that eternal silence, something more, a brighter, a bringer of new things. In violet were for some 3 suns to store and hoard myself. In this gray spirit yearning and desire to follow knowledge like a sinking star, beyond the utmost bound of human thought.
This is my son, mine own Telemachus, to whom I leave the scepter and the ire, well loved of me, discerning to fulfill his labor by slow feedings to make mild a rugged people, and through soft degrees settle them to the useful and the good.
Which blameless is he centered in the sphere of common duties, not to fall. The offices of tenderness and pay meet adoration to my household gods when I am gone. He works his work, I mine.
There lies the port, the vessel puffs her sail. There gloom the dark, broad seas. My mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me, that ever a frolic wholesome took, the thunder and the sunshine, and opposed 3 hearts, 3 foreheads, you and I are old. Old age hath yet his honor and his toil. Death closes all, but something ere the end. Some work of noble note may yet be done.
Not unbecoming men that strove with gods. The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks. The long day wanes. The slow wind climbs. The deep moans round with many voices. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world.
Push off, and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows. For my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die.
It may be that the gulfs will wash us down. It may be we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles whom we knew. Though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield.
You got a good point. Now, is it, the
I
famous
did.
part at the end, if you guys like James Bond, maybe you remember in Skyfall, M reads this, before the parliamentary hearing is shut up. So some people know the last, line of this poem. It's really pretty famous. But my assumption is that most of it just went right past. And so, I've read this poem many, many times. And I remember at first I didn't understand it all. And at one point I tried to memorize it, and then I sort of started to understand some of it. And so it's a difficult poem, I think. So it probably makes sense to sort of start at the beginning again and work our way through it sentence by sentence, so that by the end we kind of know what's going on, which is the whole point of this, for me to tell you what's going on. So to work through it together. So,
Unless the old people kind of understand it.
well, you just got an old people thing, actually. I think. We'll see. We'll see. But so at the beginning, so we meet Ulysses, and of course Odysseus, right? So Ulysses is the Roman name for Odysseus, the famous guy from the Odyssey. And he's back home, right? And it says, a little prophet's an idle king, but is so hard among these barren crags, matched with an aged wife, I meet and dole unequal laws into a savage race, that hoard and sleep and feed and know not me. So, just so we sort of get our feet on the ground here, where are we? What's he doing? Where's the relationship with all the other famous stuff that he's done? We sort of get a sense of what kind of Ulysses this is, because this is different than the guy in Homer's Odyssey.
It isn't, and it kind of isn't. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
But after all the travels, adventures, and learning, and now here he's sedentary, without adventure ahead.
Mhm.
And no, not me, is the part that is just, he's meeting out judgments,
Into the savage race.
right?
Hmm.
Who don't know him, because he knows him.
Yeah, so he's just a king and is boring. And so he's, I mean, Ulysses, as we all know, has had this epic life. And now he's home after all of this exciting stuff. And I sort of picture him, adjudicating, boundary disputes between, sheep herders. And, he's done real stuff. And now he's in Ithaca, apparently he doesn't, he's back home. His wife is old. Yeah.
Mhm.
He isn't.
No, no. Exactly.
No, it does say match.
It almost seemed to me like, just right there, as we break that down, I remember reading Undaunted Courage, the story of Lewis and Clark and their trip, and I guess what I never knew is that afterwards, they both sort of, they just had a peak experience with that whole trip and came back and there was really nothing that they could do. And I forget, I think it was Clark that died so mysteriously, an alcoholic somewhere in the South, trying to work his way back to DC to report or something. And so they just, both of them, had similar experience. They had this peak, amazing experience, and then survived it and got back and did all these things, drawing and cataloging all these things, and then what do you do?
Yeah. I think it happens to great athletes or so, and people who sort of peak early, and everything else seems flat in comparison. So yeah, he's lost what makes his life exciting. Yeah, it's not Penelope who makes his life exciting. So yeah, we'll have to talk about that. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just thinking it's interesting that, like what Jan pointed out, that people who are with him and see him don't know him. Because he's not, I guess he feels like whatever he's doing does not match who he, feels himself to be, so. There's like, it doesn't matter that what he did was a success, it's over,
Old news.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So who he is, and the next sentence is the guy who cannot rest from travel. I will drink life to the leaves. He's not sedentary, right? He's not somebody he cannot rest. So that's part of his superpower and part of his curse, right? That he is the person who has to go places, who has to have experiences, who has to have big events.
With an ego.
Absolutely.
I think you should have a motorcycle. My idea.
It's hard to get across the terrain.
Maybe as he goes on, he will.
Yeah, we don't know. At the end, he's heading west at the end of the poem.
Sounds to me like at the end, he's got it together.
He's going places.
Maybe his wife has a motorcycle.
Well, no, his wife stays behind. So we've got this long sentence, right? It begins with, I cannot rest from travel. I think goes all the way to Troy. I mean, he sort of talks about what he's done. All times I've enjoyed greatly, have suffered greatly. With those that love me, and alone, on shore and on the water. I am become a name. That's a kind of cool line. Yeah.
Or always roaming, but like his name is always. Yeah, that's kind of who he is known to be, always roaming.
And he knows himself, myself not least. I learned all these things, seeing all these things.
Yeah.
And therefore, now know myself.
Exactly. And the other people just know me as a name, right? They don't know who I am. So I know who I am.
Because of the travels.
Yes. And I am the man who has to travel. And right now I'm not traveling, so the people who know me as the guy who doesn't travel actually don't know who I am.
Well, yeah, if you've been traveling, how are they gonna know you in your home place?
I am a part of all I have had.
Yeah, and sort of, and nobody else has done that. So he has had all these experiences that other people haven't had. And yet, all these experiences are just this arch where through the untraveled world gleams, right? So his experience is just something that points towards more experiences. So there's no final experience for Ulysses. Every experience makes him hungry for more experiences.
I like that line, I am a part of all that I have met. It makes it sound like he's so big, like he encompasses everything he's met and seen.
Right.
They've all added to him, to his knowing himself.
To the big ego that Terry pointed out. I mean, this is Ulysses is an overman, right? A super man. I mean, he has been there, he has done that. Anything that you can imagine, he's fought wars, he's fought monsters, he's been to unknown places. So he has done all of that. That's who he is. It's not the king of Ithaca, right? He's the guy who's had all of these experiences. And so this, I do love the motorcycle thing, because when he says that the experience just points him forward towards the untraveled world whose margin fades forever and forever when I move. Right? So it's like a guy trying to find the horizon. He's moving, right? So he is sort of keeps traveling, but the margin fades.
Then he says how dull it is to pause, to make an end, to rest unburnished, not to shine in use. I don't think it's dull to do that. I think it's a great thing to pause.
Well, good, right? But he doesn't, right? And so you see that Ulysses is the person who cannot pause.
Yeah.
You are the person who can pause, right?
You know, that's a feeling that I have when I go out on a long ride. As I start the ride, I think of the pauses. I really look forward to the pauses, a little coffee shop or some place to look around and just stretch and everything. But once I get off, I don't want to be there. I want to be back. So I really like this very much.
Oh, I didn't mean not to go again. I just.
No, I think it's
Yeah.
important, right? You see, so in your response to the poem, you also see who you are, right?
Yeah.
How much you like Ulysses, how much you don't like Ulysses, right? How much Penelope likes Ulysses, and she's been waiting at home, she's been pausing for 20 years. Now he's back and he says, no, I'm matched with an aged wife, and I want to get out of here. So that's not being a So yeah, so from her perspective, this is probably not where she wants to be here.
Well, I bet you Jiggle, she's like.
He comes home, changes her world up. I mean, because they say a lot of people who have spouses that go on deployment, when they come home, it rocks the boat a little. You know, the wife got used to, or the spouse got used to running the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They even say that with retirement.
Oh, true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and he talks about how she was, aged, and maybe that's how she felt because he came home. Should have been running everything.
When I read the Gleans, that untraveled world whose margin fades, his margin is fading. I have less in front of me than I have behind me. So he's closer to death here and maybe in a bigger hurry because that margin is fading. Didn't he write this after a really dear friend of his died?
Mhm.
Too young.
Yeah, it's a sort of poem of loss and life is precious, yeah. No, that's right. I mean, he says, he doesn't want to pause, as though to breathe for life, right? So he doesn't just want to breathe, right? So just existing has never been enough for him. So he wants to have epic experiences. But then you're right, life, power, and life were all too little, but of one, right? Of one life to me, little remains, right? So he realizes he's at the end of his life.
Get as much in as possible.
Exactly. Every hour saved from that eternal silence, something more, a bringer of new things, right? So every hour that you can save from just breathing is an hour that is saved from silence, right? This is not worth talking about.
So if he wrote this when he was 30 or 40,
Younger, this is early 20s.
and he lived another 60 years.
Mhm.
He lived in, he was 81.
No, it's interesting. I sort of had, when I first came across it, I thought it was a poem by an older poet, but it's a poem by a young poet imagining himself to be old. But yeah,
And
so.
Penelope, right?
Yes.
30 years old.
A whopping 30, yeah. Charlotte, jump in anywhere. If you have anything to say, you can just speak into the room here.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
All right.
Well, what about his son?
Exactly, so at the end, so it's really a 3-stanza poem, right? So at the end of the first stanza, before we get there, and it's because it's such a cool line, he says that this great spirit yearning and desire to follow knowledge like a sinking star beyond the utmost bound of human thought. That's who he is, right? So he is the guy with gray hair, but he's going to follow knowledge, a sinking star, and go boldly, right, where no one has gone before. So it's this, he's not gonna be stopped. Just because he's old doesn't mean that he can't go on.
I didn't understand that part about 3 sons, why there were for some 3 sons to store and hoard myself.
I didn't either, I circled that with a big question mark.
I think about his 3 years, right?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Right, so he doesn't have much time left, maybe he's got 3 years left, who knows, right? So and it would be vile to spend my remaining few years just hoarding, just accumulating and stopping right here. That would be vile to do that, so. Right, and to hoard this gray spirit, which wants to go on, and to hold it back from going to the utmost bound of human thought, that would be vile. So he's gonna press on.
Now, the person who his friend who died, is he did later, do you know?
I think he was a childhood friend.
And his sister's fiance, so the closest, I mean, really close to him.
Well, maybe he thought he was gonna die young.
Yeah, I think he's just, I mean, he was sort of processing loss and thinking, what do you do, you know, when things aren't the way they're supposed to be. And part of what he's saying is you gotta go, right? No matter how tragic and how difficult the situation is, no matter how much time you have left, you know, don't waste the time you have, because you don't know how much you're gonna have. Maybe you only have 3 years left, maybe you have 3 days left, you never really know. And so you gotta follow him on like a sinking star. But not Telemachus, right? So then it shifts, right? So the first stanza, you know, I, and then the second stanza, he says, here's my son. And my son gets to be king. Right? So I'm leaving to my son the island and the scepter, right? So he's going to be king now that I'm out of here. And then he describes Telemachus, and this is sort of interesting and funny. He's well loved of me. He is discerning to fulfill this labor, and the labor is by slow prudence to make mild a rugged people, and through softer degrees subdue them to the useful and the good. Yeah,
That's pretty rich.
yeah, that's.
I wanna go on adventures, but you have to be subdued.
No, he's subduing. You have to
And
subdue.
son is effects, is that what it is?
The son needs to subdue these rugged savages through soft degrees, right? So you give them laws, you order them, you're patient, right? And by that, you subdue these difficants, these savages, to be useful and good people. I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
I despise these people. I've got nothing in common with these ordinary people. You can handle it, right? So you can do this difficult work, right? This labor. So Telemachus can do king, so to speak. Ulysses can't do that. Because Telemachus is most blameless and he is centered in the sphere of common duties. And so when you picture this, right, so Telemachus is here, and Ulysses, of course, is the guy way outside of the center of the sphere.
I'm gonna have fun and you rule.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but maybe Telemachus actually is good at that.
Maybe he likes it.
According to his dad, Telemachus would be a good king. And Ulysses has enough self-knowledge to realize, I'm not good at this. I don't care.
Does this not really harken back a little bit to the Odyssey? This is what made the connection with me. Is that father and son are so different.
Kind of interesting, right? It's because Odysseus didn't want to go to the war. So he was forced to go to the war, and he didn't want to go on this Odyssey. So I mean, he doesn't see Telemachus for 20 years. I mean, so in some sense they're different because he never met him. What if this baby? Telemachus was a baby. The real Odysseus, I believe so. Yeah. Go ahead.
Tell me about the name Telemachus. It sounds familiar.
It's from the Odyssey.
Okay.
I mean, that's the name of this is
Yeah, okay.
There's mine owed to Telemachus, so what, he's not talking about Telemachus, but Telemachus, his son, who would be like Telemachus.
So Penelope and Ulysses have a kid named Telemachus. And that's the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he plays a role in the Odyssey, he's trying to find his dad. But in this poem, Telemachus is the guy who can do this job. Because he's centered in this view of common duties, decent not to fail in offices of tenderness, and pay meet adoration to my household gods when I am gone. So he's gonna do the job properly.
Ulysses or?
Exactly. So he can do what needs to be done. Yeah, and of course, we have no idea whether Telemachus is the king or whether he's get me. So we don't know. We don't know what Penelope is thinking, we don't know what Telemachus is thinking in this poem. We just know that Ulysses needs to go and it's doing the job of being king to Telemachus. And maybe he's casting this because we don't really know. But it's and so yeah, it's interesting in that when you look at these characters, maybe some of us relate more to Ulysses. My job is certainly more a Telemachus' job. So we find ourselves maybe related to different characters in this poem. But it seems like Telemachus is a good guy, according to his father. Or maybe Ulysses just made himself feel good about leaving. We don't know, right? It really depends on how you read the character of Ulysses here. Obviously, if you're leaving your son and your wife, whom you've been away from for 20 years, and who knows how long he's tried to be king, maybe a year, 2, 3. I don't think he's been king for 20 years. He's just come back and it's not working. So if you're now leaving again after you've not been with your son for 20 years, either your ego is so big that you really have no room for your son in it, or you have to talk yourself into, I'm actually doing a favor.
Well, how could you even be a king if you've been gone for 20 years? I mean, that, it's not realistic.
Maybe the old lady was doing.
Probably came and went, probably.
Pardon?
Probably came and went.
But part of it, of course, he is the king of Ithaca, right? When he left, I mean, Laertes, his father, was king, but he was the prince. So he is just, this is his title, right? That's how he's king. His personality is certainly such that when he comes back, everyone will say, ooh, right? Everyone knows him. So in that sense, it's easy for him to step into this role because he kills all the other suitors, as we know, and so there's no competition. So he could be, but it doesn't fit personality-wise. So I think in terms of his power and his legitimacy, he certainly can be a king, but he can't be a king.
Because of his inner being.
Precisely, because he cannot rest for travel.
Right.
He cannot rest for travel when he can't be a king. He can necessarily know. So that's the conflict in the poem. And then he switches again, right? In the third stanza, he addresses his fellow mariners. And of course, that's different from the Odyssey because maybe you remember how many of his fellow travelers come home with him. 0. So, like in the Odyssey, he's losing fellow sailors, left and right. And often because he's taking risks that he shouldn't be taking. Right, going through Scylla and Charybdis, right, people get picked off, or he didn't need to go there. So in any case, so this is different, right? So in this version, Ulysses has fellow travelers, whom he is now addressing, right? So now after he turned to the sun, now he's turning to his mariners. Souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me, that ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine, and opposed free hearts, free foreheads. You and I are old. Old age had yet his honor and his toil. Death closes all, but something ere the end, some work of noble note may yet be done, not unbecoming men that strove with gods. I love that stuff. That's, yeah.
It's like the locker room pep talk or something.
Master's team, right?
Seems to me like wishful thinking, actually.
Well, his hip might not be bothering him as much.
That's true.
Why do you think it's wishful thinking?
Because it's like we have one more sail left in us, and it's almost like he doesn't really want to accept the old age bit. You know, it's like we're old, but we can still do this. You know, death closes all, but there's something before the end. But you know, come on, man.
I think that's right to say it's wishful, like he has a really strong desire for that. The desire is there, whether or not the wish will be fulfilled, we don't know, but there is like a passion there that has not changed with age apparently.
No, many voices. Come, my friends. It's not too late.
But it's interesting, so he's either pathetic, right? Because here's some old creaky guy saying, you know, we can go one more time.
Onward, yeah.
To the windmill.
Yeah.
To the windmill, right?
So, yeah, either it's that, or it's just, you know, heroic and awesome, right? Here is somebody who's not gonna let, you know, biology hold him back. So it's really interesting, and so you have to read the poem maybe, you know, a few dozen times, and think you sort of get a sense of, do I despise the man? Is this a, you know, a has-been who hasn't realized that it's over?
Mm.
You know, like some, I don't know, old guy still trying to run fast, you know, even though, you know, the good days are gone. Or is that the hero's quest, right? To say, I will just push no matter what. So, yeah, so that's a good question, right? I mean, I strove with gods, right? When I was out there in Troy, you know, I was doing battle with gods, and I will not stop doing petty small things. I'm not just gonna take the trash out of the windows and do that stuff. I'm gonna, and if I die doing it, it's fine. So that is certainly not pathetic, right? He's willing to push on and die doing it.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that's,
Because that sentence right before that, the last two sentences, say that to me, that there's still work to be done. And I'm used to doing it with gods, and I can still do that.
Mhm.
That's what that line says to me.
that's right.
Do I admire him or pity him?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I feel like
Well-
I understand I mean, like
No, go ahead.
No, I agree.
Do I admire him or pity him?
Yes.
Maybe a little of both. A little of both, because I think it's good to strive. You want to do that. You want to feel that you can. And yet maybe it's not in you.
How do you know?
You don't know if you don't try.
But maybe he accepts that he is an older person, so within the limits you have, it doesn't say that he's doing it as a young man. Maybe in his mind he is or isn't. We don't know that.
But even though he isn't young anymore, there's still something he can do, whether or not it's as he would have when he was young. Still, even this close to the grave, there's still something.
I made a note out to the side when I was reading this through at home. I printed it out and read it. And out to the side, I said, even when old, you can still accomplish. There you go.
Right, so that is the admirable part of Ulysses.
It's not too late.
I think it's part of a lot of people.
Yeah, no, of course. I think it's admirable in anybody to say, yeah, it's, you know, it's not working as well as it used to.
And maybe we can't do it like we used to do it, but we can still do something.
Well, it might be more noble than some of the things you have done that you
Maybe.
thought were noble at the time.
Maybe.
I so relate to this. I'm coming up on my 70th birthday, so I'm in my 70th year. And I'm starting to think in terms of there may only be 20 years left or less, you know, or maybe a little more, but not a lot of time left for me on earth. And so the month before my 60th birthday, I was invited by my daughter to compete in a Spartan race and did a 5 mile Spartan race with 24 obstacles and climbed a rope and all this stuff. So this year it started working on me that I'm gonna ride I'm gonna ride all the trails and include the trails that I haven't ridden, the main paved trails around Fort Collins. So this summer I by bicycle, yeah. And I've been off the bicycle for a number of years. I've been just doing little short jumps, you know. So I really relate to this. I just feel like, well, this is gonna be one thing I'm gonna do this year and end it by that month before my birthday of riding maybe 700 miles around the trails of Fort Collins.
You can still accomplish.
Yeah.
Maybe when you're 90, you just walk around, you know, the block.
Mhm.
That's what you can accomplish, but you don't stop according to Ulysses. You have the Ulysses mindset, you will not stop.
Like the 100-year-old captain or whatever he was in England, he walked 100 miles, didn't he? Or maybe it was 100 feet around.
Yeah.
It's not too late to seek a newer world, right? There's always something that you haven't done, so you can always seek a new world. So that part I certainly find, you know, because he's also earlier said, right, to go to the utmost bound of human thought.
Mhm.
So maybe at some point you're just thinking new things, right? And everything is falling apart.
I guess I feel grateful for that mindset, because I mean, I think about my dad, or I think about you, or you're running, and it's like, I feel happy for the people in my life who get excited about a project, right? Like, it's a joyful thing to see someone, or maybe you feel that way, because I'm like, I'm so excited I'm gonna get seats today. But it's like, you wouldn't want the person you love to be like, I got nothing. You know what I mean? It's just a joyful thing to see someone have a plan and a passion.
A purpose.
Or like my grandma, she lived to be 102, and she talked to me about this several times about how getting old was really hard, like her body was hard. But she said, you know, I wake up and I realize like I'm awake and I'm alive, and I think there must be something God has for me to do today. So she's like looking for that thing every day, even though it takes her like half the day to get up. You know?
Even if it takes half a day to get up, there's still something God wants you to do.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm grateful to get up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's gonna go west, right? So he tells us mariners, push off and city well in order, smite the sounding furrows, for my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset in the baths of all the western stars until I die. So this is a one-way ticket west. Gravity is east. And Philadelphia is too, and he's just gonna go. Like into the unknown, right? He's gonna go through the Strait of Gibraltar and just go in the Atlantic
And the west was kind of unknown then.
Yeah,
Now
past
we
that.
need to go east.
yeah, exactly. Right, past Spain and, you know, Africa. Maybe there's Atlantis. It maybe we shall touch the happy isles, right? Sort of. Maybe we'll meet Achilles. Right? I knew Achilles, right? I was the guy who was out there with Achilles. Right? That's who I am. Hey, I'll meet him again on Atlantis, right? Wherever the happy isles are. That's what his plan is. That's what he's doing. At the end of the third stanza, he's sort of heading off quite literally into the sunset.
You know, I think whoever said giving a pep talk is kind of true, because he's not saying I, whom I knew, he's saying whom we knew, because he's talking to his fellow shipmates.
Exactly.
So is he trying to encourage them?
They too are going on a one-way trip, right? They're also leaving everything behind, so yeah, you better get them on.
Better get them on board.
Yeah.
Well, it sounded like kind of that they were all eager already, somewhere up there.
Yeah, they've always taken with a frolic, right? The sun, the thunder and the sunshine, right? They've always been happy to do what they need to do. So they're his soulmate, right? These are his soulmates. Penelope and Telemachus are not his soulmates. And I think we know that too, I think, from people who've, I don't know, been in war or, I don't know, been in a professional football team, or whatever it is, right? When you do something where you really sort of tightly bound together, these are probably tighter bonds than any other bonds you have in your life. Which does make returning home more difficult. Because, the guy with whom you are in the foxhole, right, it's a more intense experience than any other experience you have.
One equal temper of heroic hearts.
Yeah.
One heroic temper.
Yeah, so these last 6 lines are so great.
Yeah.
Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield.
Oh, it's heck of a.
Ready to jump on the boat.
That's right.
I feel like that much is taken, though much is taken, much abides. I feel like that's kind of the balance point, Lori, like that's the point of like assessing. Here's what I can't do anymore, but here's what I still can do, like looking for that, what's still possible.
And what is, and we can do it.
I love that version of it. Is what it is.
Yeah, we are.
I think about the climate, how, everything's changing, but we have to do what we can.
I think of Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who's a Jungian psychologist, and she says there's a way in which we ought to be really mad at the saints. And the people who are talking to her say, "What? Mad at the saints? What do you mean by that?" And she says they abandon the people that love them. They abandon the life that they could contribute to. They're off running around, they're living in the wilderness, or they're doing these things that are between them and God. But what about the ordinary people who have to clean up after them and who have to live without them? So I'm looking at this from Penelope's perspective, and I'm saying, what the heck? You're leaving again, you idiot, I want you to stick around for a while. I just got to know you a little bit. What's going on here?
In Jackson Hole, Wyoming, as we look at the people who live there, who are there to seek climbing the Grand and skiing the Grand, the first to do that, or all of these things. And when there is a tragedy, when there is a death, the whole community says, how did that guy do that? With 2 young children at home, how could Steve Abrams have risked his life like that?
Mm-hmm.
And the rector of St. John's has a drafted a book of the spirituality of risk. Wow. So we're reading the spirituality here of risk. Because I know who I am. I am what
Yeah. So, I feel the same way as you. So I'm really inspired, but I also feel like, the person looking at the guy saying, what are you doing? Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah, we had a friend who lived, what did he say, on maybe $500 a year or something, out in his little cabin in his woods. He was like, totally off the grid and everything. Come to find out he had a wife. He was a nurse. So he was subsidized. So he got all this,
Oh.
she was doing the work.
She was bringing food from time to time.
Yeah.
But it's like everything has a support stuff, right?
Yeah. But it is, doesn't Jesus say to his family, I've got other people to worry about, right? So these people are difficult to live with, right? These Ulysses and Buddhas and Jesuses and
who is my
Jesus.
mother? Jesus said, who is my mother?
Exactly, to his mother, right?
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Well, that's sort of like today's individualism, thinking only about yourself versus the community. And if you're thinking about the community, you're thinking how you can add and be helpful and carry some of the burden, just like you were talking about, Lori, of being in community. So in this case, he has a prove that all think the same way. But you have a leader. So it's the journey of all of them. They're all gonna do this. But back home is where real community is.
And yet, if that's not who you are, because he talks about, this has given him knowledge of who he is. And if that's not who he is, I just assume him gone. If he's not gonna be, he's gonna be stifled, and then that leads to resentment and blah, blah, is not a happy home.
It's a balance, and each person has to decide which way, which path to follow.
It's so interesting, a couple of times this week, just now, I think looking at the last 6 months, I've seen people out on the street, that don't now have the strength which they had in old days. And you can see this just getting to a door, you see somebody who's elder and appearing a little bit feeble and everything, and you go and you wanna go get the door for them, and they're like, no, I'm gonna do it. They're gonna hold the door for you, by God. And you see that all the time out there. You see these folks that you think, why don't you just sit down, relax, and they're just charging forward and doing it, so it's really interesting.
Yeah, because that's, which they are, right? Just because your body doesn't do what it used to, your spirit is still what it is. And this is disconnect. Yeah.
So a guy in College Avenue that was, don't know that he was so elder or so old, but he was having a real hard time walking, and he had a walker, a cane kind of walker thing, and he had a real unusual gait, and he was going up College Avenue, and the vision was this couple were coming this way, and they were just walking, but the guy was just looking at him like, what the heck is he doing, and he just couldn't take his eyes off him, like, I don't know if he was, saying faulting him for being out there, or worried that he was gonna fall or what, but it was really interesting little dynamic, a nonverbal dynamic that went on between those two, and in myself, because I was observing both of them. And I like the one with the cane better than the one that looked judgy at him, So, and that was my selection, was the guy. That's who I wanted to have coffee with, the guy with the cane.
He said, this kind's not gonna keep me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the poem, and I think, some people are more like Ulysses, some are like Telemachus, and I think ultimately you gotta know who you are, right? And maybe if you're like Ulysses and you aren't wanted there in the first place, but maybe you didn't know it when you was 18. So then that's the tragedy there, that, before he traveled, he wasn't a traveler. But yeah, it seems like the Ulysses personality is providing, in a certain sense, also the real community service, because he's inspiring me and others to do the best with what they've got. So it's not a useless gift, it's just a difficult gift to combine with being a dad and a husband. But it's not these are the people who we study, these are the people who bring new inventions and who are climbing Mount Everest and doing all of these things that inspire sort of other human beings. So, but yeah, like these great individuals are really, no one of them was dad. So they're there. But you want to have him around because he's not.
Want to have them visit occasionally.
Yeah.
Well, I understand this a lot better than I did on the first meeting.
That's the point.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.